Hey everybody, welcome back. So I have another build that I came up with that's pretty interesting for you here. This time I wanted to make a build that centers around the BST or the PO6 booster. This is the booster that has the highest thrust value in the game. However, it does lack in its QB stats quite substantially, not only for its low thrust, but also for the fact that it's very expensive to use those very small thrusts. And just an unremarkable QB reload time to go with that. Duration's not terrible, but nothing great either. Essentially, this booster really relies on using the passive boost speed in order to evade the majority of attacks. So bunny hopping with this build is going to be essential. You're going to need to keep changing your up and down trajectories if you want to passively kite things like assault rifles, the Harris, and then to a lesser extent, just because of the projectile speed versus the distance, close range weapons like SMGs and pistols. Okay, so with that in mind, one thing to note about the booster though is because of this high thrust, we can get very close to the ceiling of maximum boost speed on bipeds with a heavier weight and more resistances than we otherwise might. So for that reason, we're going to run the HAL core, which is an interesting choice. It doesn't have great booster efficiency adjustment, but again, because this booster doesn't really need as much emphasis on that, it's not going to hurt us too much to take that lesser efficiency because we're not going to be getting many boosts anyways. The stability is notably lower on this core. That is something to be mindful of, but because we are playing an evasive build style, hopefully we're able to mitigate that in conjunction with our shield launchers, which you probably see here. In terms of the weapon, I'm just going to start off with the weapons now, and then I'll come back to the rest of the frame parts. But there are two weapons. My personal favorite is to run the 66 LR, and just having this weapon as a passive pressure tool in lieu of missiles, because we are going to be running two EULEs here. We need a weapon loadout that can create a lot of pressure at range without missiles. And so taking the LR for the projectile speed, and as well as stacking it with the VE20A generator, which is the lightest weight energy generator that we can get specialization at a high amount with. This allows us to effectively approach that 380 boost speed while running a decently threatening armament in our hands. So that generator is actually going to boost the LR. The plasma rifle recently got a buff, so I did want to find a way to use this. It turns out this build is quite dependent on it. It has a very strong base attack power compared to the Nebula, which has a focus on the charge attack. That said, we still do use the charge attack, but it is great when we're against heavier mechs to be able to hit them not only with the laser rifle or the laser shotgun uncharged, but also passively hitting them for 1,000 damage nearly. Actually, a bit more when you factor in the energy specialization on the generator. So this just creates our tool that allows us to non-firing stance do a lot of damage. The EULEs are effectively our only real form of impact buildup, and essentially they are close range rushdown shutdown tools. And there's a lot to talk about with these, but I'll have to get into that with some of the clips. But we're going to basically use this to prevent people from being able to rush us because we don't have great QBs. We need to be able to force them to spend a lot more energy by dodging around these, and that's going to be essential to the build. The knock arms, we're going for max firearm specialization. Anytime you're shooting at like medium range, you realistically, the projectile speed is going to be what holds you back. So you have nothing, like no wiggle room here. We need to be landing, or our FCS needs to be basically working overtime, and we need our arms to not be holding it back. And so we're going to be running the max firearm track. Alba legs allow us to have the decent amount of stability and the most amount of speed for the load limit that we can squeeze out. We could get a bit more speed if we ran these legs, but we start to trade off a little bit too much in defenses. Again, with the BST booster, we're trying to get decent defenses on a fast-moving mech, which you typically don't have. So the Alba legs here are going to fill that slot. FCS, we're primarily focused on medium range, so we're running the PO5. We don't have a lot of energy specialization room with this generator, energy supply efficiency, so we do need to run the PO5 over something like the Walt. But and while that will cost us a little bit in close range, it's not really an issue because we're trying to stay out of close range anyways. And anytime people do manage to get close to us, they're throwing up the shields. If they dodge them, we're dodging onto the other side of them and just using it to create space again. So the PO, we're just going to focus on medium range. And then the AoE of the plasma rifle also just really helps in close range anyways. And the shields also don't need close range assist. So that's kind of why we can get away with not needing the close range assist to be a little bit higher than we might otherwise would. But the knock arms will help us with that. Assault armor essential just because the build is a fragile-esque kite, but it does need just something in the tool belt in order to counter something that's going to rush us down. Having assault armor is just a great little last bit of nuke damage. It's also a great punish if for whatever reason everything's on cooldown or reloading. Just to have a backup punish option that will kill them. You shouldn't use assault armor unless it will kill them though as a stagger punish, just because if they get their pulse armor up right after taking it, then you're usually going to die. So you only use this if it's like offensively, if it's going to like finish off the opponent. Okay, I think that covers the rough build. If you do want to swap for the laser shotgun, there are some notable pluses and minuses. You're going to trade off some of the ability to kite at range, which the laser rifle is great for. It's just chunking little bits of health off constantly, forcing a lot of pressure. The laser shotgun does have surprising ideal and effective range, but it's not going to be hitting as hard, and so this tends to work better if you're against builds that are more focused on rushing you down anyways. Once you start getting into kites and whatnot, it's going to be very hard to create enough damage at range with this weapon, and given the slower projectile speed of the plasma rifle, you're going to be relying on the charge attack in those cases for fast movers, and holding still means you're taking damage too. So it's kind of a trade-off where it's like a damage race. Usually what I'll do against kites is I'll just purge both the EUL launchers because I'm not going to need them really, and if I do that, the first one will give me 4380, basically 44 EN supply efficiency. You could keep one if you like, but adding the second one off will basically get you up to just about 6,000 EN supply efficiency. So at that point I just assault boost and I'm just fanning both triggers, looking for opportunities to land the charge attack pulse rifle when I see them out of energy or like heading to ground, in which case this will do a big chunk of damage against them. Once you get the health lead, then you can back off and they have to come pressure you depending on the map. That may be an option and how much cover you have and their missile loadout, but that is up in the air. Oh, one interesting note about this build too is the head options are extremely limited. This is probably the first time I've ever been forced to use the Fermezza head. I could use the knock, which I do like the aesthetic of more, but I use it a lot, so maybe it's a good thing that the Fermezza is slightly better in this case, just for giving us a little bit more EN supply efficiency. We don't typically need as much stability with this build because you can throw up the shields and like spread them out a little bit, and then you can just sort of like alternate what side you're on while they're trying to shoot you, and then you can use that as a way to get your stability back. Another thing is anytime you do manage to shut them down on their rush down with just a spam of EULs, it'll do a ton of stagger damage because you got 6 of these basically. So we're talking like 3,600, well, more than 3,600 stability. You can literally strip somebody's pulse armor off and then re-stagger them. I'll actually show that clip right now, and then we'll jump into the PvP stuff, and I'll show you some of the text as well with this. Okay, so first I'll just show you how efficiently you can strip off pulse armor after staggering an opponent with the shield launchers. So while you're punishing, if they decide to activate pulse armor, you can basically re-stagger them as though it was like an assault armor. Extremely efficient, which is also going to tie into our punish. So the EUL is actually an amazing punish because you can fire all 4 weapons at once. If you're running the laser rifle, let's say you stagger, QB in the air directly backwards if you're aerial, and then you can just dump all 4 triggers. When you QB backwards, hold forward those to cancel the momentum. If you are using the laser shotgun, you're firing the 3, so the bottom left up and 2 shoulders while you charge the shotgun into a charged shotgun punish. So a little bit more damage on that one, although they can move during that shotgun hit, so they can block with a shield. This is an absurd amount of damage. Like you can, like a lot of times if you stagger someone, even if they pop pulse armor, they're going to be dead before they even realize what's hitting them. You can see you can literally delete an entire max health bar in the time it takes for pulse armor, basically to deploy unless they're preemptive with it. If they slip away from you, just go for a charged laser shotgun into charged pulse instead. That's another option you can do if your punish is at range or if your EULs are on reload. The EULs are going to take a lot of getting used to. I'm not going to lie, this build is quite hard to use just because the EUL is hard to use. Here's the ranges that you can have the detonation proc. Note if you fire them at the same time, they will detonate each other. So if you're trying to create a web sort of shield, like if you're playing defensive with this and not trying to go for an immediate rushdown, shutdown, then you don't want to fire them right at the same time. You want to be moving while you fire them and sort of stagger them a little bit, especially if you're firing all 6. I do think it's wise though to always save at least 1 or 2 in the clip, so that you have something, if they slip past it all, you can put 2 more down, and then you can sort of use those as like a wall that you keep going through to make it so that they can't hit you every time they shoot. It just gets blocked by the shield. It's a really good habit whenever someone's rushing you down, when you fire your shields, to then change direction and QB back towards them and through the shields. So we'll look at some matchups here. I'm actually playing some really strong opponents in this or in the last 2 days or so. So we'll take a look at that as well. So here we're playing the number 2 on the leaderboards, running an aggressive lamb kite build. I also played a lot of his shotgun PS shield builds. I don't think I recorded that one, so I have some other matches with some other really strong top tier players running that build though, just to show you how to handle it. But yeah, this build is really good at facing shutdowns. It's just, however, a very slim margin of error because you have to be using your shields effectively. You cannot just rely on the weapons to chip them away the whole time. It does help you in getting the HP lead, but you do sooner or later got to get that shield stagger off at some point in the match in order to get the massive amount of damage you're going to need. So at this point, I think the opponent just realizes that I'm going to win the AP lead if we just trade, which forces them on the aggression, which is what we want with this build. We want to force them to run into the shields. Looking for situations where they are near cover and they can't QB as much around, like their mobility is limited, is a great time. But another really general strategy is just to hold off from firing the shields too early. Try to bleed out as much energy of their assault boost as you can by backpedaling and maybe just 1 or 2 QBs. Keep in mind this build does not have a lot of QBs consecutively, only about 3, and then the 4th one will overheat you. Or drain your battery, I mean. And so you need to use your QBs sparingly, and you always want 1 at least to get on the other side of your shield. So you need to just focus on using the back pedal for the most part, even if that sometimes means taking some damage. You need to always have a little bit of energy in the reserve. To note, whenever your opponents go left, you go right around your shields. Always try to keep the shields between you and the opponent. Even if they get past it, quickly get back over. Like, try to stay close to those shields. You want to keep using them, and do that by always returning to wherever you deployed the shields as soon as you can. Once they've slipped past it, don't just keep backing up. You might be tempted to, but your best defense is always having those shields somewhere nearby. So I ended up losing this match, but I wanted to show the importance of terrain and showing you how getting the HP lead with this build is huge, because getting your opponent to be forced to pressure you and then therefore pressure into the EUL shields is the crux of this build. So the first round I play aggressively and allow the opponent to take me into the area of the map where I'm at a disadvantage, i.e. the open. And you can see the difference that makes on the second round when I end up getting the opponent, or I decide to lure the opponent into all those buildings and create complications with dodging the shields. Another thing too that I didn't know at this point was you should just purge the shield launchers a lot of the times against kites and just assault boost spam with the lasers and just go for pure DPS. You've got a strong booster. You can maybe keep one of the EULs because 4,000 and change is still plenty of EN supplies, so that should honestly do the trick anyways. But if you purge 2, you get a little over 5,000, like I said, so it's quite a lot of supply difference. Anyways, we'll watch the match here, and then I'm going to clip out the third just because I got to save time in this video. But you can see the difference here, like how I'm losing the HP trade, and then how once I get the terrain advantage and start using it, how it makes a difference on the second round. This build's a lot of fun to use against melee builds or any sort of rushdown build. So in this case, it's going to be very important to bunny hop because we're against a flamethrower. So we need to keep the tracking thrown off with our super fast boost speed and then luring them into the shields essentially. So making sure you don't always have to dump all 6. Keep in mind as well that even just doing it in triples, like one side then the other, not only allows the one side to be covered during its reload because you've got the other side to deploy if they decide to rush you down. But it's just more conservative, and always make sure that you always have access to some defense. You're not going to be completely vulnerable. I still sometimes get a little aggressive with the 6, but you really only need to do that against tankier mechs. Like mechs like this, you're pretty solid without doing that, so there's really no need. Just conserve them and do them in triples. Oh, another note, the Eule launchers are really good at shutting down straight fire missiles. So any missile that fires in a straight path from the opponent towards you. So that includes things like this coral missile, 6 cells, like the direct shots, even split missiles. Because if you're backpedaling, you fire the shield, just don't move left or right, and the shield will basically track right into the shield. If the opponent's strafing, then just back up for a little bit and then fire the shield. Just delay a little. And then you should be golden, and the shield will intercept the missiles.